Hello and welcome to the Schola Progenium. So today we've got an exciting video for you, something we've been promising for a while across both channels, Schola Progenium and Mordy and Gloria. About this time last year we did a video. Tim had been to a tournament, Caledonian Uprising, and you'd earned Best General for Imperial Guard, joining those ranks of Best Generals, which is absolutely fantastic. That's, for me, as we discussed at the time, the most important tournament trophy. With, you know, on a personal level, that's what's important to us. But what we're actually going to be doing today is we're going to be discussing secondary objectives. Now, it's going to be a combination based on experience that we've picked up over multiple games of 9th that we've managed to cram in, but also a bit of theory crafting as well, just because we don't want to be specific to just our main factions, Blood Angels and Imperial Guard, because we have a lot of different factions, about 10 different armies currently for the channels between us, and so this is going to be more lessons you can use whatever you collect. We know a lot of you out there don't just collect one army, you've got 2, 3, you've always got a project in the works, you've always got something, and it can actually be quite a challenge when you're playing one of your secondary armies, or when you're just starting off in 9th. It kind of goes hand in hand, where you don't really know what to do. I mean, you've got an idea, but you've got a gut feeling that maybe you're making the wrong decision. You feel a little bit anxious about maybe picking a secondary where you're setting yourself up to fail or something like that. So we just wanted to basically talk about the mindset in the first part of the video that you should have, and then the second part of the video we were going to go through every objective in the book and the individual mission objectives for the 2K bracket, and just look at specifically when are they good and when are they a trap, because a lot of these objectives can be great and serve you amazingly one mission, and then the next mission they just set you up to fail and you fall flat on your face.
Yeah, I would also say there may be some players out there which have sort of completed their first army with 8th edition, because many people got into the game at 8th.
Yeah. And
now with 9th edition, they're excited, they've got the bug and they want to collect another army, but obviously the objectives have changed. So hopefully this video will help you decide on an army, because you don't want one that might be giving away too many objectives or not actually be able to play the objective game very well.
And another thing is that I've found from personal experiences, I built a Drukhari Witch Cult army through 8th, and when 9th rules first dropped, I was, rending at my hair. I was like thinking to myself, what am I going to do, with the change to fly rules and this, that and the other. But then you quickly realise that whatever army you've got, whatever theme you've got, whatever sort of units you like to take in your army, you can build an army that works for you and suits your play style, and then score points based on what your specific play style is. So a lot of people may collect a faction where the general consensus is to play it one way, but you've always had your own ideas or your own approach. You've always had a preference for a specific unit.
Yeah.
And this lets you take that experience or that preference or that enjoyment for a specific unit and make it actually go beyond just using it for the sake of it and because you like it, and make it valid
absolutely.
And a high scorer.
Absolutely.
Well, first of all, we'll look into sort of the mindset you should have when you should come into secondaries. Now, you should be really, really flexible. I think sometimes you'll look at a secondary that you've written off. For example, raise the banners high. For me, I just wrote that off. I thought, I don't have the infantry coverage. It's just not going to work for me. But then I realised when I'm running sort of 3 units, 5 units of infantry across the board up into my opponent's face with my Blood Angels, or when my witches, get blown out of their transports in the back field, and normally they just get hosed down and killed before they can run up and get into combat, they can actually run onto the objectives on my side of the field and raise those banners. So when I'm in an emergency or when things aren't going to plan, or rather when I'm just taking damage and things are happening to me, being able to run onto an objective and make use of something and raise banners high, that's...
We'll get into the specific objective in a minute, but your point is, don't necessarily go in with... I mean, I would argue that you probably want to try and go into it with maybe 1, that your army will be good at, and then 2, that you can adapt on the fly.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think you want to have one that is old reliable. You know, that's one that you're confident in. It's one that you can do consistently. If you've got, you know, a couple of flyers engaging all fronts, for example, might be one, or it's just something that you know, I'm going to get this off. At least 3 turns of the game, I'm going to get this off. It's almost impossible to stop me.
Yeah.
Because of the units I've got in my army.
Yeah, I mean, to take a slightly extreme example of something, you know, like not to do with this mindset, is just because you like an army that's full of snipers and you know you'll be able to target characters all the time, doesn't mean you just choose assassinate every game, because you might come across now that only has 2 characters. Yeah, you're going to kill them both in turn 1. But that's it. You love the idea of assassins, but it doesn't mean you choose assassinate every single time.
Yeah, exactly. So you need to
it's like an exaggerated example, but
well, no, but you're absolutely right, because it's not the point is you need to have your old reliables, but you need to be able to set those aside and just say, this is not going to work today. And the good thing is that there's actually the sort of second category of objectives that you might pick are your on-the-fly objectives. They're those secondary objectives where, okay, I'm facing knights, so I'm taking Titan Slayers. You know, even though I'd love to go for assassinate, you know, I'm going to, and I've got loads of these snipers in my army, and I've built my list around this theme or whatever. It's just not going to work today.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many games I've used it. Today is not the day, and I need to let it go. And I think also, like in the early days, you want to experiment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a couple, when you're learning the game, I would find one old reliable that you're comfortable with, and then try that one out and then experiment with a couple of other ones. I would be careful not to just choose 3 different ones every game just for the sake of it. I would obviously try one that you think is going to work. If it does work, keep it. If it doesn't work, swap it out.
Well, you want to try it in different circumstances, don't you? Because you're not going to find the one that works for you every day in every battle until you've tried it matched up with other things as well. Because, for example, you could pick one objective that's, you know, sort of old reliable and that kind of thing, and then all of a sudden you're trying out a different one and you find that they almost complete each other together just because of the way you play. So you're looking for those combinations, thinking and managing 3 different secondary objectives, and keeping your units alive, and controlling primaries, and defeating your opponent's high threat units that are going to stop you getting your secondaries, and knowing all of your opponent's secondaries and stopping them completing any of those is a lot to manage. It's a lot to handle. So you need to have a go at different objectives, because then when your opponent says, I'm going to be using this, you can obviously say, right, okay, I remember using that myself, and know that it's really difficult to pull it off if someone does this against you, or something like that. So you want to try different things out. You want to try different combinations. You want to try things that work together, and you want to make sure that objectives don't, on the counter, I think, pull you apart, pull you in 2 directions.
And just another point I think is important to make is, just because you go into your first or second game and an objective that you picked didn't work, don't then write it off for the rest of your 9th edition career.
Yeah.
Like, I have a lot of people who on my channel, and I see comments on your channel as well, where they're like, oh, I tried that unit, I tried that tactic, and it just didn't work. And it's like, well, yeah, it didn't work that one time, but it doesn't mean that you don't keep it in your toolbox. And it's the same for when you're picking secondaries. You know, just because you tried thin the ranks when you took on a Custodian's army doesn't mean that thin the ranks is totally useless. And I know, again, I'm using kind of extreme examples to prove my point, but it's a lot to as an example of my point.
Well, it could be you go for line breakers and you've got to get 2 units, and the first couple of games your opponent keeps
his gun lining, and you
just can't get in there. But or maybe you realise that, okay, I'm trying to do this, but I'm trying to score these objectives with units that need to be placed elsewhere on the battlefield. So actually, now that I've got a small little light, you know, what's those Mechanicus guys that drop down with the flamethrowers?
Oh, the new one.
The new ones, they look really, with the bird wings, they look really cool. I have no idea what
they're called. It's got a very fancy name, though.
Yeah, well, those guys, we wouldn't be able to pronounce it even if we knew it. They, you know...
Mechanicus.
You know, they...
Flappy boys.
You may buy a new unit because you're just collecting an army as it is, add a new unit to your army, and then unlock a secondary that whilst you're trying it out. So you're trying this new unit out, try some new secondaries out for that unit, you know, because they might well tie together. That's what's so beautiful about 9th, why I'm enjoying it so much, is that just layered approach. You know, everything is layers upon layers. You know,
yeah, absolutely.
I think the other, so we've talked about opponent specific or sort of on the fly when you just have an auto include just because you've set up on the day. We've talked about being flexible and having that old reliable. But another thing that I think you need to be aware of is actually deployment zones when you're setting up. So table quarters is one of my favourite
I've come
setups. For example,
I was very unsure about it when I first saw it. But I love it.
But I, you know, and I've loved table quarters all through 8th, and I loved it back when it was a thing, you know, years ago.
Many moons ago.
So you know, it's just a cool way to play. I just like it, and I enjoy it. But it actually gets in the way of me taking a lot of the objectives that I would normally take. Yeah. So you sort of have to know when. You have to know when when you just have to realistically look at the deployment zones and say, am I going to be able to get into their deployment zone? Or so many of the objectives rely on doing something in the opponent's deployment zone with one or more units, and if you're not realistically going to be able to do that, and
if you are, for an example I would use on that is if you are facing an opponent, if there is a deployment zone which lends itself to castling. So, for example, table quarters can lend to castling because it's, you know, people have the ability to sort of wedge themselves in, and just by the nature of it. Or a better example is
it's a smaller deployment zone because all the others are thirds generally.
Yeah, exactly. That's a quarter, or if you've got what used to be ham and anvil, where it's long, you know, you've got the long table length, which used to be great for gun lines. That is that has a lot less width, so it's much easier for your opponent to cover all of it. So if you're facing those in those deployment zones, do you think you're going to get line breaker? You've got further to run. The zone is smaller, and your opponent has an easier chance of just roadblocking you. I mean, in those cases, you wouldn't want to do that. If you're playing a classic Dawn of War, it's very easy for you to just sneak a unit around the left, sneak a unit around the right, and chill out behind some obscuring or dense cover. Yeah,
so it's just, and that kind of leads us really nicely on to the second part of this video, which is we're going to look at every objective and we're going to say when are they good and when are they a trap, and this is how to sort of how you could grab those objectives for the best. So
I'll also say we may not agree on every one. You may say you think one's good, I may say one's bad. There may be a little bit of debate here, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because you're coming from more of an elite player perspective, I'm coming from more of a horde player perspective. But between the two of us, we should be able to give a pretty good perspective on every objective.
Also, I have a mainly assault perspective,
a salty perspective.
Sometimes, but you're more shooty, aren't you, as a general rule?
Generally speaking,
but that's not 100% true. I own Tau. You know, occasionally getting to combat.
I have Progenium, which in theory are
that's true.
But I run them as a guard army. So I like to shoot them up and then finish them off with their bayonet. Or the equivalent. My Black Templars were originally a mass assault army.
I've sort of got to the point where I've abandoned shooting because it's so much like it's almost become a vicious cycle for me. I need to get more shooting back into my list, I think. But I've got to the point where I'm just like, I'm not going to hit anything anyway.
You've had a lot of games where, and we're going very on a tangent, so we'll keep it short, but where you've relied on a shooting phase and it's just gone to shit.
Yeah.
And I think it's just ingrained itself in your memory.
There is a reason for it, which is, you know, if you've got Blood Angels Astartes list, then you know a lot of your characters are going to be combat characters. They might have to operate you can't castle up really, spread around, so you can't get the most out of your buffs, which is where Astartes shooting shines. You know, reroll hits, reroll wounds, lieutenant blah blah blah. So it's just something that, you know, there's no point in really focusing on. But we'll get into the objectives now.
Okay.
So first of all, we've got the category Purge the Enemy. Now, in Purge the Enemy, the first one is Assassinate. It's an end game objective, which I really like endgame objectives because it's kind of it can lead your opponent into a false sense of security. They think they're ahead, but they're not keeping track necessarily.
And then suddenly, bam, bam, bam.
Bam, bam, bam. Yeah, I've got 9 more points or whatever. So score 3 victory points at the end of the battle for each enemy character model that is destroyed. So it doesn't have to be HQs. So there'll often be more than 3.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, think of guard characters. You've got 3. You've got Lord Commissars, you've got company commanders, and then you've got astropaths. 6 up save, no and run, 3 wounds. It's literally the easiest character I think to kill in the game, and you're gonna want to kill them because they're psychers anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think,
and that ties in nicely if you're killing psychers anyway.
I think assassinate is a really interesting one. I think some people would say it's not a good one because you can screen characters and whatnot, but I would argue now with the way that lookout serve means you have to be within 3 inches.
It's much more doable.
It's much more doable. I think it's one of those where you look at your opponent's army and you think, what is he going to be doing with those characters? Is he playing Tau? Is that a Fireblade or a commander sitting in a bubble of shield drones and broadsides, and he is going to be very tough to get to? In which case, he may have 5 or 6 characters. You probably don't want to pick assassinate because you're very unlikely to get them.
Even with all your imaginary sniper list.
Exactly. Even with the imaginary sniper list. On the other hand, you may have
maybe facing Blood Angels or Knights, where they've taken
every Knight's a character.
Every Knight's a character, but you probably want Titan Slayers, and they're in the same category, so it's
exactly. But you may be facing a list which only has 3 or 4 characters, means, I can't max it out. But if those characters are suicide characters, smash captains, things like that,
well, they're going to be on the front
popular.
Lines.
They go over in the front lines. You will get through that screen. It's an end game objective. You could spend 4 turns killing the screen, and then last turn, bam, bam, bam.
It really makes your opponent. If your opponent wants to do things with their characters, assassinate is a great one to take. Like if you know, right, my opponent is going to have this castle, and he's going to have like a couple of units of Centurions with a captain, a lieutenant, or a chapter master, Tiberius, or there's a million different things you can do, and you're going to be able to get to those guys. It kind of stops him from running them off on a flank or using them to solo one objective and stop you getting to it or anything like that. It means that they have to stay safe, and it really restricts the character's movement across the battlefield, because characters could go on a little run, a hop, skip and a jump to try and support somewhere else on the battlefield, but in travelling across there may be a brief moment where they're exposed totally, or there's only a 5-man squad there that can easily be dackered down, and then you can pick them off, or something like that. So assassinate really restricts your opponent. It's a really nice one for that, but it is a huge trap because it is one of the most unreliable objectives you can take. You can't really build an army that focuses on assassinate because you've no guarantee that you'll have people to assassinate, or that you can pull it off without the situation. It's a chancer.
It's an on the fly one.
It's an on the fly.
It also requires a little bit of judgment of your opponent. So you have to look across that battlefield and like, right, yeah, my opponent's got, like we said, 3 or 4 characters, but what kind of characters are they? Does he have 3 or 4 smash captains? But is his list set up where he could just happily use those as support captains or counter-attack captains? Is his list flexible? So assassinate is one that you pick when you are 99% sure that your opponent has got characters which are like missiles that he wants to fling into you to take a key unit out, like a traditional Thunderhammer smash captain,
or an army that kind of has to spread. So if you're playing Dawn of War and it's a 6 objective map, and they've got quite an elite force. They're going to have to spread the characters out or put the characters all in one place, and either way you can focus all of your army, your reserves or your firepower on that area, clear out whatever's covering them, and then just shoot the characters and kill them, or hit them in combat, whatever your army style is.
Absolutely.
So if you're playing on a spread out battlefield, and they've got a lot of characters that need to do stuff, go for it. Otherwise, avoid like the plague.
Yeah, I'd agree on that.
In terms of bring it down, this is going to be a quick one. So it's an end game objective again. Score 2 victory points at the end of the battle for each enemy monster or vehicle model with a wounds characteristic of 10 or less that is destroyed, and 3 victory points for every one which is 11 or more that's destroyed.
Yeah.
Just to be quick. Now, this one's an obvious one, really. If they've got a lot of vehicles, just pick this, because Assassinate's a difficult one. If they haven't got Titans in their army, you're not going to need Titans. And Slay the Warlord is, it caps out at 6. So
the only time I would say bring it down is a no-brainer, unless you're facing someone who might have 5, maybe even 6 vehicles. But those vehicles are things like rhinos, where you may end up killing 4 out of those 6 vehicles, but you only got 8 points. So don't just look at across the board, across your opponent's army with a casual glance and go, oh yeah, it's got 5, 6 vehicles, that's fine. Look at them. Have they got 11 wounds each? Are they vehicles which are super durable? You might be facing the Primaris Impulsors, which currently have a 4+, but apparently it's going down to a 5. That's not confirmed yet. They are really difficult to kill, and you may be facing 4 or 5 of them, but are you actually even going to kill 2 or 3 of them?
Do you really want to have to kill these vehicles as well? I mean, the thing is, sometimes if you leave an opponent with all their vehicles on the field, they're going to ravage you if you don't take them out. So you're always going to want to take a couple of vehicles. So bring it down is a really good on the fly one when, so for example, you've said often you struggle to know what to pick.
Yeah.
And bring it down is one when you just really don't know what to do and they've got some vehicles. You can just kill those vehicles because vehicles are bad news anyway. Get rid of them. And when you're saying don't just have a casual glance, one thing that came to mind for me is actually have a think, what 2-point vehicles do they have that are really easy to pick up? Have they got 4 Mechanicus Walker robots?
Yeah.
That's 8 points just to blow that unit up.
Yeah, that's exactly.
It's literally 8 points because they're 2 points each and there's 4 of them.
Exactly.
And done. If they've got if you're playing Mechanicus and they are cheesing out with 2 units of those robots, of the Castellan robots, they're only toughness 6, I believe, or even
they are actually really
toughness
they are
7.
difficult to kill.
They are difficult to kill, but they have to pick between being really difficult to kill or really shooty. And they're vulnerable in close combat if they're the shooty version, and they can either lock down and fire twice, or they can move more and have less of an invuln and that kind of thing. But if you can pick them out, you could max that with 2 of those units, and that's the majority of their force. You can really just focus down. Right, they're playing this way. They're their key threat units, and this will also score me 15 points just to keep myself alive.
I think what we're saying is bring it down as a no-brainer, but it's it's not a totally no-brainer. Just if you see a lot of vehicles, 9 times out of 10 it'll be a good choice. But if it's a lot of just crappy rhinos, 4 rhinos, it may not be a good one if they've got other stuff you can get more than 8 points on.
I think what we're trying to say is when you have because it's an obvious one that you're going to pick a lot. When you have picked it, be clever about the way you're playing it. Don't shoot that rhino necessarily just to pick up these 2 points now when you can probably get it turn 5 or something like that and still get those 2 points. It's an end game objective. You don't have to score it in the early turns. You can kill the high threat vehicles, then switch on to other stuff, and then pick up a few extra points when you need it. You don't need to max it out, but if you do, you can go for it. Oh, you know what? I'm just going to go for all your transports and get an extra 8 points, and that'll let me win. And there's nothing you can do. So just be clever when you've got it. Don't just be like, right, I've got vehicles, let's blow vehicles up. Titan Slayers. This one...
If we spend more than 30 seconds on this one, that would be weird.
Yeah.
If you face Knights, pick it. Even if they have a single Bane Blade, pick it. Because there's getting 10 points for killing one model. It's the only objective that you can do.
And if you can't get those 10 points, you really need to take a long hard look in the mirror.
We always say, Knights are the gatekeepers. Your army needs to be able to have enough punch to kill a knight in 1 turn. If you can't do that, go back to the drawing board.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be able to kill a knight,
but in 1 turn. So, for example, a Space Marine Smash Captain can kill a knight in 1 turn.
You need to be able to remove a knight.
Yes.
And sort of, if you can kill 2 knights and they've got a 3 or 4 knight list, then you've basically won the game anyway.
Yeah.
So, secondaries... You know, for I'm a knight player. I have both Chaos Knights and Imperial Knights.
You like Mech Warriors.
I love. You know, we used to play Mech Warrior all the time when we were kids on the PC. But you know, I love knights. But this is the great leveler for knights because they basically start the game against any serious, against any serious opponent. You know.
15, yeah.
So slay the warlord. Score 6 victory points at the end of your battle if the enemy warlord is destroyed.
I would never take it. If it was 8 points, I'd take it. 6 points is too low.
Well, this goes back to our mindset thing, this flexible thing. So, in our most recent battle report, I picked Linebreaker. I knew it would be a difficult one, but I knew if I could pull it off twice, I'd get like maybe 8 points. But I wasn't really going to do more than that. Well, in all of that, I could have probably focused in and slain your warlord and got 6 points. You know, if you're really climbing an uphill battle... You know, when you say
the far back though,
and maybe not in that specific battle, but what I'm saying is when you are thinking to yourself, I really don't know what to pick for my third objective, and so you're not really going to be committed to that final objective. Like, fuck it, I'll take attrition or you know whatever. You may as well take something. I'm just saying, don't write it up.
Too low.
Well, it's low, but it's better than 0. But this goes back to our be realistic and be flexible.
Yeah, okay, I get it. I understand what you're saying. I think it should be 8 points. And then
it should just be the same as first strike.
Yeah, 5 points or 3 points if you kill it with
in the first half of the game. Something. By the end of turn.
It's like an honourable duel, like, you know, you could get an extra 3 points. It
doesn't
have to be warlord on warlord, it could just be any character.
So boss battle, yeah
exactly.
so to speak.
That would be a cool way.
Yeah, that would be a really cool way of doing it. Right, so we're now on to No Mercy, No Respite. Now, I really like this whole set of objectives.
I'm not so keen.
This is it's cool. It's a cool set of objectives. So the first one, thin their ranks. Now, I'm not going to read it out word for word because it's a long paragraph. So suffice to say that you keep a tally of all of the individual models that you've killed, and at the end of the game, you get 0.1 point for each, as in like you divide the total by 10, and that's your victory points. But vehicles are actually worth 1.
It's any model with more than 10
any
wounds.
Any model with more than 10 wounds. So this one it's either an auto include or it's a not. It is very much an on the fly. It depends who you're facing.
I think it is. The problem, I think the objective in the ranks is a really good one. I think it has one flaw, which is that it includes vehicles. I think the problem with, and that, you can take it alongside Bring It Down. And I've spoken at length about this myself, so I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but basically, if you take Bring It Down and Thin Their Ranks, each vehicle you kill is worth 4 points.
Yeah, so really, if you've taken Bring It Down, and so you've already thought to myself, right, I've got loads of vehicles to kill, then their ranks just gives you an extra point for each one.
Exactly.
So, you know, again, if you're facing Mechanicus robots, you're going to get, they're not going to count. So that's a trap.
Yeah, that's a trap.
That's a trap right there, because they have to have 10 wounds or more. So from your perspective as a guard player, you're like, this is really bad. But if you took Thin Their Ranks against, and you're playing against Drukhari, and they've got Venom spam, and they've got 6 Cabalite warriors, they're worth 0.1.
Yeah,
those vehicles are not going to score you anything. They're going to score you 2 points a pop, and that's it.
I think what's really interesting is
it's
when
mad that it's absolutely, sorry to interrupt, it's just absolutely mad to think that transport like a Venom is worth the same as killing a guardsman.
I think I think that's a really good way of I think it's just not been thought through. I think a lot of people online they say, just take Thin the Ranks if you're facing a horde. That's not true.
No.
If you're
facing a mech-heavy list, Thin Their Ranks is also great.
Like you said before, if you can't pick something, pick Slay the Warlord. If you can't pick something and you're facing an army with 6 or 7 transports, like Rhinos or something similar, Thin the Ranks is a better choice than Slay the Warlord, because you may never get to that chapter master who's sat at the back buffing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you will get an additional point for every Rhino that you kill.
And it's also good when it's a great one to take when you have the upper hand. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you just want to, if you think, right, realistically speaking, I'm going to batter this opponent army versus army. If this was 8th, I'd just shoot them to death. And these are the kinds of ones that you know you take, because you're just going to capitalise on that. You just don't have to think, you don't have to manage anything, you don't have to be like, oh, what table quarter am I in? Just shoot away. And if they're going to outrun you, and they're a high-scoring Drakari list where they're not going to try and even kill you, but they're just going to try and fly around, then it really is a race for the most points. And the easier you can make that, the better.
I think we've actually very efficiently summed up all the pros and cons of I thought we'd spend way longer on that one. But what I would say is, it just feels like Thin the Ranks is in a weird place in the categories, because if you look at like Bring It Down is obviously there. It's like, if you're facing a mech heavy army, take that one. If you're Titan Slayer, if you're facing an army with lots of heavy vehicles, take that one. And you think, oh, the one if you're facing a horde, that would be in the same category as Purge the Enemy, but they've not done that. They've gone, actually, we're going to allow you to take the Thin the Ranks one, which is a specialised, you know, I take this versus a certain type of army, and put it in a separate category. And what they've done that is they've actually caused an issue where it means it's almost an auto-include against any army.
But I think that's intentional. I don't think it's badly thought through at all. They put Titan Slayers in there so that whoever if you've got a semi-serious list, so you should be able to blow up a couple of knights, and you end up rocking up to the gaming club and there's a dude there with a cheesy knights list, and you think, right, well, I can still score. This is going to be totally fine. And if you rock up and you've got, you know, decent amount of anti-tank, but you are facing some crazy heavy armour, then this is the leveler to that.
But then you take Bring It Down. But what?
And you combine both.
My counter would be.
I think
they put Titan Slayer and Bring It Down in the same category, so you can't pick both. If you're facing an army that has 4 knights and you successfully take out, if you could take Bring It Down and Titan Slayer, it would mean that you could get 3 points for each knight as well. So they've seen that and gone, oh yeah, you can't have it both ways. And then they've gone, but within the ranks, we'll put it in a separate category.
You'd have Thin Their Ranks in a separate category to Attrition, and that brings us nicely on to the Attrition objective, which is the second one in the No Mercy, No Respite category, which is score 4 victory points at the end of the battle round if more enemy units than friendly units were destroyed this battle round. Now, just to make one final point about Thin Their Ranks, which is, it is absolutely a trap if you're facing an elite list.
Oh yeah,
just don't touch it.
Don't even consider it.
Don't touch it.
And I actually want to say one. I want to go back to the very beginning for 2 seconds. Say the reason I don't like assassinate is because an astropath or a platoon commander is with the same points as Gilliman. That's just what I forgot to say. Let's not go back into it. That's just a little comment that I just thought of. Anyway, go on.
Assassinate can be really easy if they've got loads of luck, but we discussed it. So Attrition, score 4 victory points at the end of the battle round if more enemy units than friendly units were destroyed this battle round. I think this is such a gamble, because I've taken it, and it's almost a just pure trap objective, because once the dice are rolling, you do not know what is going to be the lay of the land turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, and every turn that goes on, increase the likelihood that you've got scattered units with 4 guardsmen here, or and even if you're an elite Primaris player and you've got 1 outrider here and this, that, and the other, the opponent can really the way to play Attrition reliably is to wound units down in the first couple of turns and then just go bam bam bam, 1 dead, bam bam bam, 2, and then this turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, and you just go for 12 points. You just go for 12. You consider 12 the max. You set yourself up. This is one of those where you think, because if you try and play it turn by turn, you just don't know if your opponent has a bad shooting phase, which actually leaves several of your units wounded, and then they finish all of those off the next turn. They don't have Attrition, but they block you getting it.
You've made a really good point there. Attrition is, I think, the first objective we've come across here where your opponent can counter it, can interact with it,
even if they haven't selected it. They can beat you with it. Yeah.
You might, if your opponent knows you're taking Attrition and he's like, oh, I've got all these 2-man drone units, he's just going to hide them, or even worse, he's going to put them in strategic reserves, and you're not going to see them until turn 5. He can counter you.
And it's almost the better you do early on, the more you're setting yourself up to fail later. Because if you score high the first 3 turns, you kind of have to hold back. Like I found myself, I took attrition a few games back. I can't remember who it was against, like Death Guard or something. And I had some sanguinary guards.
If it's against Death Guard, that's super trouble.
No, because
I'm diplomacy.
Yeah, I don't think it was Death Guard. I can't remember who it was, but I had some sanguinary guards, and I just remember specifically not Death Watch. I meant anyway, not Death Guard. Sorry,
they're pretty durable too.
They are very, very durable. Well, they're probably more durable. It depends, but the point I was making is there was a point where I didn't want to shoot my sanguinary guard wrist bolters because
that's so stupid.
Because I didn't want to. Because I knew if I because I thought if I just let that unit live until the next turn, then I can finish it off.
Yeah.
But then they knew that I was going to do that, and they suicide charged.
Yeah. Like you can have 4 points this turn. This is the only 4 points you're going to get.
Yeah. Because you've killed 4 of my units to 1 of yours, but now I've got so few units left that it's impossible to score.
Yeah.
And you may say like, oh, that's great because you're going to win the game anyway.
Well,
but there's nothing worse than creaming an opponent having taken attrition and having scored 4 points, and they've been running all around the battlefield with scattered units just picking up points the whole time.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just such a trap.
I would.
It also can be great.
Let me tell you why I think it's. So, me and you run strong lists against each other, but we don't necessarily run top tier. Neither one of us has ever run a Leviathan Dreadnought or a Chaplain Dreadnought, for example.
No.
But the reason why I think attrition is truly a trap, and this might be a good, might talk about this more in another Voxcast, is I have subscribed to the theory that the tournament winning lists in 9th edition will be the ones that are durable. Not necessarily the ones that do the most damage. It's just about not dying, and that's where I think will be the top. And a good example of this is in the last 3 tournament reports that I've seen, because tournaments are picking up a lot here in the UK. Death Guard at podium in the last 3, first, second, and second. And this is Death Guard weren't even on the radar in 8th edition when it came to tournaments. Like 1 or 2 people managed to make them work, but they weren't really on the radar. And now they're podium in 3 tournaments, and it's simply because, thanks to Psychic Awakening, and thanks to just Death Guard's innate ability to be hard as nails, they don't die, and they certain objectives.
And a lot of armies coming out of 8th have been built to kill as hard and as quick as possible.
They're like glass hammers.
But if you can't pull it off...
Glass cannons.
Well, that's the thing. Attrition is just difficult because it just relies on you... It's just too variable.
You have to kill more.
Too many variable. Now,
what if you both killed 4? You don't get it.
Yeah, because it has to be more. It can't be even.
Yeah.
Now, there are some positives to attrition. There are some times where some people will be listening to this and thinking, "Oh, these guys, what have they got against attrition?" Like attrition can be really good. Obviously, if you're playing against someone who has just purely say I was playing knights, with my knights.
Yeah.
I'm going to take attrition.
Yeah, that's a good point. You're very likely to get it.
Because
you've only got 3 models.
I've only got 3 or 4 models, so it's just really likely that I'll kill 2 for 1, 3 for 1 every turn. Even if I'm doing badly, I'll probably kill more. So from that, attrition, if you're playing Custodes, even there you get into a trap, because again, you can get your units whittled down and then you can get blocked. Your opponent can almost... If your opponent is a better player than you, attrition is just do not. Do you know what I mean? Because they are going to outthink you, they're going to think ahead.
Even if you're facing MSU. Everyone's talked about 5-man units, but like people that talk about 5-man units are the ones that are taking 5-man units that are so effing durable that you're not really going to...
If you're facing against my witches, for example...
that would be an alright choice.
You definitely take attrition because you can pop 1 raider
and 5 guys.
And 2 squads of 5 witches, and that's 3 units, and that's quite a lot of units in the bag. So there are times, if they're using light transports, multiple small units, it's a good one. If you've got just like 3 or 4 models on the board, it's a good one. But apart from that, it's almost impossible to manage and control over the variables across 5 turns.
Yeah, and I would say, and just to close that one, as we said at the beginning, every objective is scoreable, keep your mind open, all that kind of stuff. I think attrition is definitely doable in circumstances, just like bring it down, just like in the ranks, are all doable in certain circumstances. I was just saying that what the top tier meta seems to be shaping, and just for everyone to keep a little eye on that, it's looking like durability. And if your opponent is super durable, then you go and if you're both running 6, armies which basically have got about 6 to 8 5-man squads and a few vehicles, neither one of you is really going to get attrition there.
But the thing is, it is a big scorer. Pull it off 3 times, you've got 12 points.
It's only 5 rounds now,
once you've hit, I find once you've hit about 10 points over, I've played 12 games now, and sometimes I've maxed my secondaries all the way. Sometimes I've really struggled, and it's like getting blood out of a stone. And I think just as a general rule of thumb at this point, and obviously I've been watching loads of other people's battle reports as well online and that kind of thing. I love, watching stuff on YouTube as well as being a content creator. But once you've sort of got about 10, 12 points out of a secondary, you can be happy with that. You can don't pick things, but again, getting 4 or 8 is too low. Yeah. And you're selling yourself out.
You want to try and get 9 as a minimum, and you want to try and get 2/3. You want to try and get, if you can get a jet that will get you 10 points. You haven't.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's go on to
So while we stand, we fight. Now this is an interesting one. Again, from my perspective as a Knights player, it's quite interesting because it's a big gamble as a Knight player, but also quite a funny one because. A really good tactic against Knights is to kind of spread your damage. So bracket, if you're not playing Hawkshroud, which is 1 house out of 15, 12 houses available across Chaos and Loyalist. But while we stand, we fight.
It's basically the models. You look at your army, you look at the models which are your highest points. They have to be nominated, and if they're alive at the end of the game, you get 5 points for each model. So if you've got
and it's model, not unit.
Yeah,
it's specifically model.
So if you've got a Lord Commissar with a Power Fist, he's the highest pointed individual model
in your infantry
army.
But it could be 3 Lehman Russes.
Exactly.
Which again is it's it's a good combo with Bring It Down. If they've got While We Stand, We Fight,
and they're taking 3 tank commanders,
and they're taking 3 tank commanders, and you take Bring It Down, you're laughing. So always remember, that's what we really the advice and the sort of mindset just keeps coming back to it, which is it's about objective management.
Yeah.
This is a management, a balancing act, a game where you are constantly keeping multiple plates spinning, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, me and you have looked at this, and for our particular playstyles, it's less useful. But some people have looked at this, the crafty devils at the tournament scene, and have found a way to guarantee 15 points every turn.
Well,
which is where they do, not every turn, every game, which is what it's Eldar. Bloody Eldar. They always find a way to get into the top tier, don't they? If you go Eldar, you take 3, I think it's Skyrunner Autarchs, at 85 points each, so they are the most expensive, individual models if you then look at things like having lots of little infantry,
if you've not got
fire
tanks
dragons, and if you haven't got tanks, exactly, but you don't really want it too many tanks because obviously Bring It Down. They're cheap enough where you keep them off the board until turn 5 and you go second, and then turn 5 you bring them on.
I mean,
and you get 15 points.
That's the clever
it's
thing.
The big brain move.
Yeah, that's the While We Stand, We Fight goes into that first category, which is the rarer category, which is you can reliably have it
if you build
in a build to your army. You can just get that every time. You can. It's almost impossible to stop you if you're cunning and you've built your list for it. But if you haven't built your list for it and you just think, while I stand, I fight. It's going to be something that you really have to concentrate on. It's really going to restrict you because you're not used to playing it.
Yeah.
If
it's not a random pick. That is what you build for.
Don't randomly pick it. Right, final one in No Mercy is First Strike. It's an end game objective, but really it's a first turn objective. Now I really like First Strike.
I see a lot of people take it, and I understand why.
So score 5 victory points at the end of the battle if any enemy units were destroyed in the first battle round, and score an additional 3 victory points if more enemy units than friendly units were destroyed in the first battle round. The thing is, you can pick First Strike on the fly and know you're going to get it.
Do you know what's really funny about First Strike? is you don't pick it when you go first. You often pick it when you go second because your opponent moves towards.
Well, you have to declare before that point.
No. Do you?
Yeah.
Oh, fair enough. Okay, well, no, but you can roll the dice, and if you win, you I'd like to go second, please.
Yeah.
And then your opponent is like, oh, okay, I move towards you. Thank you. I didn't take that much damage from you because you were overextended.
Yeah.
You were further away. Yeah. Now you're close. I will move forward. First strike you, but technically it's second strike.
It depends because it depends who you're facing. Because if they can reach out and touch somebody,
absolutely, it's a funny.
Then they're going to reduce. Yeah, it's a funny option. So
if you're the kind of player that has the ability to alpha strike, you go turn one and you take it because you want to go. If you're the kind of player that's I know my opponent's going to have to come towards me to get the most out of that, then I will go second. For example, our battle report with the guy versus Blood Angels, it's in a funny sort of way. If you pick first strike, you probably would have actually got all 8 points. Because I only killed one unit of intercessors. That was the only full unit I killed. Yeah. And then you came in your turn, were
yeah. I mean, that
would have been a second strike. Yeah. First, in brackets, second strike.
I mean, yeah, because it was my first turn that I went second. And I think first strikes. It's not as much of a trap as one might think, because 8, as we said, we said earlier, 10 points is a score you can be happy with, but 8 points early on is a score that your opponent very much is not going to be happy with.
No, exactly.
If you think about it this way, if you score first strike and then your second turn you've set yourself up to have more objectives than your opponent, and you get 15 points for that. You can play that way. You can build first strike almost into your list. First strike can work in any circumstance.
Yeah.
So if you know you're running for primaries, and my whole gig is I get 15 points second turn, 15 points third turn, and then I just play it by ear from there. Because at that point you can't really be more reliable on primaries beyond that point. But if you were going to play that way, you'd actually go first strike as well, because then if you can do it, and you can get 23-point lead regardless of the other 2 secondaries you picked, which could well be bring it down and score, and you've scored yourself another 3 points or something like that. So it's a pressure objective, it's a mindset, it's a voodoo objective.
What's also your opponent's like, oh, you took first strike,
and if someone's got 8-point lead on you, that is a climb you have to make.
What's really good about first strike is, again, we're seeing it with armies like Death Guard. Armies like Death Guard are taking things like first strike because they're very drawable, so they're not going to give it away. You're going to get the 8 points, is what I'm trying to say. And so what happens is with Death Guard, I think the one of the lists I saw that won a tournament, the one that came first, was Death Guard was Plague Marines. No one takes Plague. It was Plague Marines.
They can have 3 plasma in a 5-man squad.
They weren't even taking upgrades in them.
But they just are they're so good against Primaris.
It was Plague Marines, Nurglings, and Plague Burst Crawlers. All the guy did, which is all of that is OBSEC apart from the Plague Burst Crawlers. It's all super durable, and all the guy did is it was every game pretty much was he moved into the middle. He just held all the primaries. He didn't give away any secondaries, and he just took things like first strike and domination, things that ones you would never take, but because he just held objectives and couldn't be shifted.
Yeah, it's one of those where
if you've got
and if you've built, it's very much, it can work if you've built your list around sort of preventing them from being able to get many secondaries.
Exactly.
Because then because that's the point. If you can grab these low point objectives absolutely 100% reliably, and almost 100% reliably give anything up, or really get in your opponent's put a spanner in the works, then that's so it's a good one to pick if your opponent's already moaning. If your opponent's going, I don't really know what to pick, I only really have 2. You're ticking first strike because you're thinking, well, if he doesn't know how to maximise his points, then 8 could be just the lead I need.
Yeah.
So first strike, but obviously it's a trap. If you're playing against a fast-moving, mobile, high-scoring, they're going to be high-scoring. Then you can't afford first strike. You need to gamble.
If your opponent is an example of this being, just the battle, Bloody Rose, they can just launch multiple units, 24, 26 units across the board, turn 1, and take out half an army.
Which is why First Strike...
If you're facing that kind of list, don't pick First Strike.
So First Strike can be a trap against Horde armies, because you think in First Strike is like the most obvious opponent would be a Horde force, because they're going to have low durability, high number of units, but multiple small or regardless, still low durability, and you can kill 2 of those off. Or loads of light transports. But if they've got quite a hoardy army, whatever that may be, First Strike can set you up to fail, because they're probably going to try and score high. They're probably not worrying about holding you off, but they're just worrying about getting everywhere and scoring everything they can, regardless of what you do to kill them. They don't give a crap about each individual unit getting blown off. They just know they'll always have another one to score that objective. If you take First Strike, you're going to cap out at 8, and then aiming for way higher than that.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're going to struggle to manage your opponent on the battlefield because they've got more units than you, and they're then obviously you don't know what they've picked, but you can tell.
Yeah, exactly.
What they should pick. Think from your opponent's perspective. To go back to mindset, think on your opponent's perspective. Look, if I were them, what would I pick?
Yeah.
And then think to yourself, how we said earlier, don't pick secondaries that are going to pull you apart, pull you in multiple directions. Try and focus on make life easy for yourself in terms of the management. Well, think when you're looking at your opponent's list, if I were him, what would I pick? And then if you think he's definitely going to take something like X, you can pick something that allows you to stop him completing his objective whilst completing your own at the same time. So if you think he's going for, engage on all fronts, where they have to own multiple table quarters, at all times and that kind of thing, if you've got a good shoot, you think he's definitely going to take that, then you might pick things that tie into shooting, because a lot of the time you're going to be picking off units that are all around the board. So you might at that point go for attrition. You might actually pick attrition if you think they're going to go for engaging all fronts, because they're going to be scattered. You'll be able to bully them and pick and get more kills than them per turn. So it's one of those. So battlefield supremacy is the next category. Engage on all fronts. Score 2 victory points at the end of your turn. And the great thing is at the end of your turn,
not the command phase,
not the end of the game or anything like that. If you can get there, you can grab it, and that's what makes this, in my opinion, one of the best, regardless of the army that you take. People hated this when they first read it, and I can't. It's so good now. The more you play it, the more you think, God.
Every battle report, people are like, so I had to think, so I decided on bring it down. Then while we stand, we fight. But then, of course, I took engage on all fronts. And every single one, I was like, engage on all fronts. It is the probably only one that's an auto include.
Engage on all fronts. The shittier situation, the better it is. To the point, the shittier situation you're in, to the point where, think about it this way: you can get, if you just decide, right, I can probably survive till turn 5 if I'm just targeting the really nasty units. So I'm going to put my killy stuff into just getting rid of those nasty units, but I'm never going to beat my opponent in a fight, like in a straight fight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick engage on all fronts. I'm just going to refuse to fight, and I'm just going to score 15 points by just making sure whatever happens to my units, I don't give a crap what lives, what dies. I'm just going to have something in every table quarter, and it's almost impossible to stop you doing that.
The thing with engage on all fronts is it's like, I actually used to, when I took it in my first game, I was trying to max it out, and that actually led me to being too spread out. The thing with engage on all fronts is like, if you just focus on taking 3 table quarters, you are going to get 10 points. And that is good.
And it's so easy to be in 3 table quarters.
Last game, I went into that game going, I'm just going to go in 3. That was the one I went in, and I was like, I'm just going to sit in 3 table quarters.
You can build for engage on all fronts ridiculously cheaply. So you can almost have a list which is built for something entirely different, but just have 5-man squad of something crap and spend a command point on it. And you can just and have 2 like if you've got 2 squads that are worth 4 power level each, or a 4 and a 5 or whatever, if they come to under 9, what I'm saying is you can have 2 squads for 1 CP or 4 squads for 2 CP, and you just got them in reserve, and they're like 50 points each or something. They're crap. You don't even need to spend the points on units that are able to deep strike. That's what I'm saying. You look at your shittiest units in your codex. The crap, like paying unit tax in 9th is a suicide mission. Because the points level have gone up so much that you don't have all... I said it in the battle, but you don't have all the toys all the time.
Yeah.
So every point you spend that isn't on your focus is a big loss.
Yeah.
But Engaging on Front is one of those where you can just really cheaply build it in for like 200 points of your list.
I think everyone knows how strong that one is. It's
now, Line Breaker... So we'll move on to that. Well, the trap of Engaging all fronts, I think, is presume... The trap isn't taking it. The trap is presuming you're going to score highly on it. So what I would say is you need to have a sort of checkpoint in your head that almost needs to become part of your inner psyche. Like, you know that it goes command phase, movement, shooting, psychic shooting, blah, blah, blah. You know the orders of the phase. And this almost has to become on a level to that second nature.
Yeah.
So you look at the battlefield, every turn you go, have I got all 4? Or have I got 3? Yes, I have, okay. If I haven't, can I charge that unit into that unit that's on the other, do you know what I mean? And just get it across. So sometimes you were just doing this mini 2-second check every phase where you go, should I be charging that unit which I want to charge, or should I charge the other unit over there because it actually takes me into a different table quarter and I score
an extra point,
and that takes me to the max for the
so really
it's one of those. So you just need to have that mental check. Have I got it? Can I do more? Every single phase.
It's a no-brainer.
It's a high management.
It's a 95%.
Yeah. Line Breaker. Score 4 victory points at the end of your turn if 2 or more units from your army, excluding aircraft, which, remember, Engaging on Front, you can do it with aircraft again, just makes it great. So, Line Breaker, you don't get it for aircraft, and they've got to be wholly within your opponent's deployment zone. So,
not just the other half of the board.
Not just the other half of the board, not table quarters, it's their deployment zone. So this is one of those where you almost can't build into it. It doesn't matter how deep strike you are, it doesn't matter how reservy and runny off the flanky and all this you are.
Yeah, I debated this one a few weeks, until we played that table quarter game. I would have said, easy way for any Gal player to pick up this is to take the bunch of scions and deep strike them in 2 at a time and get yourself 12 points. I now, after playing table quarters, don't think that's a good idea because table quarters is very easy to just screen you out.
With Line Breaker, what you really want to be thinking about is when your opponent's taking it, because it's so bloody easy to block. If your opponent takes Line Breaker, you need to acknowledge that they've taken Line Breaker because they have a plan to get in there. They're going to do that, and they have to commit. It takes a lot of resources to get into the opponent's back lines.
It's 4 points each time they do it.
Yeah, it's 4 points each time they do it.
Do it twice, and they've kind of got the minimum. That is good.
Exactly. It's a really good one for Blood Angels. But it's sort of like it's a good one for Blood Angels because if your assault goes well, you'll have units in their objective. But it's what I have found sort of 3 times. I'm so close to giving up on Line Breaker or sort of putting it to my. I'll use it if I need it, but it's a general no. I'm no go near it because as a Blood Angel and as a Dark Elder. Like, they're my sort of 2 main armies that I'm using at the moment, and obviously 9 out of 10 games it's Blood Angels. And I just automatically think I'm going to get this Line Breaker. Why would But it's the same thing as the Slay the Warlord, or the sort of it restricts what you can do because I'm like because Tim could quite easily just drive a tank out of his. If he knows I'm coming for the assault, it can be time to scatter sort of out of your own deployment zone because then they've got to choose. They've got to choose: do I attack you or do I go to score?
Yeah,
it's and do you know what I mean? So you've
got one of those ones your opponent can counter.
Yeah, it's such a trap, Line Breaker, because you have This is why it's a trap. I've had the sort of light bulb moment, which is to get into your opponent's back lines takes a serious commitment of resources, and those resources really can't afford to not be killing stuff at the same time.
The one thing with Linebreaker I would say is a really good way of achieving it is with units that can deep strike in, but that have got great shooting. So, for example, I think Linebreaker is really good if you take a couple of units of tactical terminators.
Yeah.
Because you want to take tactical, you want to take terminators anyway because terminators are good. You don't always pick it, but then you see, I'm facing an elite army which doesn't have great combat width. It's got great focus, but
and
not
I'm
width.
on a big deployment zone.
I'm
now.
on Dawn of War. So what I am going to do is he's going to probably refuse one of the flanks. I'm going to deep strike my 2 squads of tactical termites in, and they can shoot their storm bolters at max shots, max range all the time because of termites. They're not losing out on firepower. They're durable, so you're probably going to get it 2 or 3 turns. You're going to have a good time.
Yeah,
so
that's it.
It's not a total trap. It's just situational.
Yeah, Linebreakers fits into that middle category we said, which is it's one of those where whether you take it lives and dies on the deployment zones.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to fully build for it. I mean, if as a Marine player, if I was taking a nice middle tier list, I'd probably want a couple of units of tactical termites anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I'm putting my tactical terminators back in. The last couple of games I haven't had them. I've missed them.
Yeah.
It reduces my objective ability too much. Tactical terminators are like the king of secondaries.
They didn't go up in any point.
They're so we'll get
so
deeper
good,
into
man.
it.
Termites back. Anyway,
yeah. So Linebreaker can be a huge trap or can be a huge boon, and that basically lives and dies on deployment.
Yeah.
Now, Domination. Now, Domination, I personally think is you build for it. Score 3 victory points if you control more than half the total number of objective marks on the battlefield at the end of your turn. Now, if you think about it, to max that is nigh on impossible because and it's a real risk to build for it as well, because I think 2 of the 2K missions, sort of tourney style missions, only have 4 objectives. I think 4 of them have 6 off the top of my head.
I think the 4 objective ones are easier to do on.
Well, you've got to hold, if you just think of it from a percentage point, on a 6 point...
I know it's 75% versus 66%. I know that, but let me tell you why. Let me hit you with some knowledge. Right, which is, if you only have to... when you look at the 4 objective maps, they're often fairly... there's 2 bang in the middle, there's 1 each deployment zone, roughly. That means you only have to go halfway, and then you're doing it. Whereas with the 6 objective ones, there's often sort of 2 on your opponent's side of the half. You know what I'm trying to say is like there's 2 at the halfway point, but they're towards your opponent. 2 at the halfway point, but they're towards you, and then 1 each deployment zone. So you can get those first 2, which are nearer to you, but then you actually have to go over the halfway point to start getting that other one. So again, I keep referring back to Playmates because I've been really doing the deep dive on them. Because the guy who won it was taking Domination, and he was just
and you need
walking
to move beyond this Plague Marine thing. It's like one,
It's an example of how he can build for it.
You can build for it, right? So this is what I was going to say. You can build for it, but I actually think that's a trap. I think it's a flexibility one. Well, I think it's just one of those where you keep an open mind on it if you haven't built for it. Because if your opponent is just going to castle up on, let's say your opponent's whole MO is whether it's 4 or 6, they take 2 objectives, they can control that with like a broad castle or 2 really solid castles, and they're just going to go for 10 points a turn for 4 turns on primaries and get 40, and they're going to leave you to do what you want and try and shoot at you whilst that's happening, and they're going to try and bring you down, they're going to try and thin your ranks, blah blah blah. At that point, Domination is a great one because you know that they don't want to spread. You know you're going to have control of the battlefield, and you're going to get 15. You're going to get 15 points. So it can very much be an on the fly if you and it's almost a great on the fly one because it's quite a cheesy one in that circumstance, but it's actually really good against cheesy gun lines.
Yeah,
if your opponent wants to gunline, Domination is a really good one.
Domination, I tell you what, it
really makes them come out and
It's one of those where if you've got one of these durable lists, so I'll move away from my Plague Marine.
But not just durable, also fast moving.
Yeah,
because it's at the end. It's at the end of your turn, Tim. It's not scoring. That's the point I'm making. It's not about the durability with this one. It's about the speed.
I think it's either ultra speed or ultra durability. You either move on to it and you stay there for the whole game, or each turn you're like zip an obsec there, zip an obsec there.
This is the flex. This is why in list, just in general for all objectives, you need your troops and you need multiple units. And you need a bit of flexibility because infantry are still alive and well in 9th and actually probably more viable than ever, just because being able to take an objective and then they want to strip you off it because they know you're trying to score domination, so you need more to pile onto it your next turn because it's at the end of your turn you score it again. So domination, if you've built for it, it's really hard. If you've built for it in such a way where you kind of don't care about losses and you almost think to yourself, they're going to go for thin their ranks on me, but they're only really going to get about 10 points thin their ranks on me. If they go for attrition, they're probably only going to maybe get like 10, 12 points because I've got a decent amount of damage output myself. But really, I don't care about losses. I've got I can do a lot of damage myself, and I'm going to dogpile objectives. So every turn, it doesn't matter what you lose, you just move more stuff onto it, score again. They shoot you off it. Who gives a crap? You move more stuff onto it, score again. So it's just because you score it at the end. When you first read it, you think 3 victory points for more than half.
That's mad. That's
mad. But actually, if they're a gun line, it's an auto include. Whatever you are, you may be quite like shooting yourself, but like if you know they need to castle up, you take it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it can be a trap to build for because it's also one that can be. Unless you really, really build for it, don't half build for it.
No,
You either go for it or take it on the fly.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
Shadow operations. So, investigate sites. Now, the shadow operation ones as a whole is one that I only really like. It's difficult. I'm very hot and cold on them. You can build for them, but they seem to be able to be difficult to pull off. But then if you do pull them off, you can score high, or sometimes you don't score high. They're very variable, the shadow operations.
Well, it's the only category where that's not true, but it's one of the categories where they're all progressive objectives.
Yes, but is it the only one? Yeah, I think it's
not quite the only one. Battlefield supremacy.
Is also. So shadow operations, it's about being fluid on the battlefield. If you think about it, like progressive objectives, about being fluid on the battlefield. Keep the ball rolling, keep moving.
Shadow operations it's about, in a weird way, it's almost like a lot of it's about objective. They're weird.
They're weird. It's really hard to discuss them.
When everyone, you've
got to play them. And get used to them, and you should know how to play there. You should play them, even if only to understand how to be stopped from achieving them. So if you run all the shadow operations a few times, ultimately, even if you'll know why it was difficult for you to achieve it, and then when one of your opponents has built for their shadow operations, you know how to stop them doing it because they're a bit finicky. So the first one, investigate sites. Score 3 victory points each time a unit from your army successfully completes the following action. And obviously completing an action really restricts a unit, so it can be a massive sacrifice. So it's like shadow operations for like really elite armies or few like knights. Obviously they can't do knights anyway, but custodians, that kind of thing, you really don't want them. They're kind of there for hordes, in my opinion, almost exclusively. But maybe I'm missing something.
Sort of. The first one, investigate sites. Basically, you have to be within 6 inches. You have to be within 6 inch centre of the board, and then no enemies within 6 inches. And if you then do your action, you get 3 points. The problem with that is, I believe you score it
at the end of your turn.
So no, it's not too bad. So you can get it like turn 1 if you go first, but then after that your opponent could just in their turn just feed a lot of units into the centre of the board and just stop you from ever getting it. Investigate sites, it's one of those ones where your opponent can counter it, and the ones that we've all been a bit fun that we have been a bit funny on throughout this review has been the ones where your opponent can counter you.
Well, you know what I think? I think investigate sites might actually stealthily fit into the category of whether you pick it based on deployment, because investigate sites becomes a lovely combo with, say, domination, or other such objectives where you score from multiple objectives and there's an objective in the centre of the board.
I know.
And there's not many missions with objectives in the centre of the board.
I think it is.
I feel like it's good for guard. Like, on the front
No,
of it.
I think the problem with
because you score it at the end of your turn. So what you essentially do is you run. It's easy to play to flexibly, because what you can do is you can run your units onto it in the movement phase within 6 inches and blast anyone who's within 6 inches off, and that's your priority. Bang, got you 3 points. Next turn.
No, because you can't start performing the action if there's someone within 6 inches. I don't think.
And no enemy instances, yeah, so you can't perform it. So it's almost impossible, because as long as they run a unit to it, it's real easy to block.
Yeah.
So maybe we should be talking from the perspective of, if someone else takes investigate sites and they've planned for it and they've got some master plan for it. I mean, the thing is,
you can 40-50 point unit of guard and move. That's the problem with it.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to stop. It's perfect for guard.
I can spend 250 points.
If you're facing an assault army, investigate sites is just you're just gonna score 0, because they are gonna be
in your face.
Because they know not only they're killing stuff, they're stopping your score whole secondary.
The reason why I think it's one
you can
of the
end
weakest,
up with 0 points.
Yeah, you can end up with 0 points. The reason I think it's one of the weakest ones is just purely from a guard perspective, not taking it but countering it. I can stop my opponent from getting that objective for a grand total of 250 points, because I can take 5 units of guardsmen and every turn run one into the middle of the objective.
Let's read this again more carefully, just to make sure we're not missing anything.
Yeah.
Score 3 victory points each time a unit from your army successfully completes the following action. Investigate site. 1 infantry unit, excluding characters, from your army can start to perform this action at the end of your movement phase. So you get to run onto it if it was within 6 inches of the centre of the battlefield, and no enemy units, excluding aircraft,
it's
are
not
within
like
6 inches
you could
of the centre.
start doing it and then you get it if you blow the enemy away. You can't even start doing it.
You can create.
If someone's within 6 inches of it.
What you need to do is, okay, so you need to create an exclusion zone around the centre and play out from that, which isn't impossible to do. What you can do is you can deploy everything with the intention of basically castling in the centre. If you've got if you can really build for it, like you can really strongly build for it. So if you have some counter assault units and some hardcore shooting units, like a nice balanced marine list, essentially what you do is you set up everything really close to the centre.
Yeah.
You run up forward. You abandon your own deployment zone essentially, or you've got a few units flying around to get objectives, maybe some outriders or something like that. Or you could be Tau. This would work beautifully for Tau, but they don't have to. No, well, they don't have to close.
They don't want to.
They don't have to. Well, all I'm thinking is essentially, if they try and get close, you hit them with combat, and you get to the point where they don't want to come close to you. Like if they're going to be running around elsewhere, you can score it, but you don't know until you declare. It's just a bastard.
You can kind of try and get it, but we're putting a lot of effort in here to try and work out.
It's a lot of management. Yeah, that
it only takes a very small amount of effort on your opponent's hand to
just block it. It's just a trap.
I think it's a good one.
It's just a trap straight up.
I think it's one of the, like we said, engagement fronts is one of the few ones that's almost an auto include. Investigate sites is one of the few ones which is almost a total write-off.
Please do comment if you have had luck with it and have come up with. But as far as I can't think of anything. I've taken it and I didn't get a single point for it.
Yeah.
So score 5 victory points each time a unit from your army. I mean, the thing is, it is good for assault armies if you're pushing them all the way back and they can't get through your lines. But the thing is, there's always going to be gaps. You can always run through.
It's not Napoleonic times where you've got an unbroken line. All it takes is one.
That's the thing. All it takes is one
through.
That's it. It's so easy to block.
Yeah.
Repair teleport, Homer. This one is my favourite of the shadow operations because it's the same as engaging on fronts, where you can build it into your army for basically no troops tax whatsoever.
The reason I like it, I agree 100%, but the reason I like it is you can combo it with line break, and we can bring that 2 tactical Terminator squad combo back in.
Absolutely. So it's separate to line breaker. It's separate to engage on all fronts, so you can combo it with a lot of things. Now, and a lot of placement style secondaries. So it's really nice if you want to play the placement game. Score 5 victory points each time a unit from your army successfully completes the following action. One infantry unit from your army can start to perform this action at the end of your movement phase if it's wholly within your opponent's deployment zone. The action is completed at the end of your next command phase, provided the unit attempting it is still wholly within your opponent's deployment zone. Now, you can't shoot if you do it.
The reason, the way you can
I think you don't want it is, I don't think you... it's cool to do it with termies, but that is an expensive unit that's not doing anything.
Can I tell you why I think it's really, like, cool? It's because you can take Pair Teleporter Homer, Line Breaker, and I saw another one, but I can't remember what it was. You can take those two, and you can what you do is take a unit of assault terminators, like 6 strong, and you have just like a captain in Terminator armor or with a jump pack, and you just deep strike into like the corner of your opponent's deployment zone.
Catch a fracture, so you've got 4 up in,
or 3 up in with the storm shields, and you've got
a
cheap character, and the cheap character sits there furiously rebuilding the teleporter home.
Yeah, that's
whilst your Terminators tank all the damage. He's totally surrounded, so they can't get him. And every turn that combo is alive, you're getting 9 points because you get 4 for Line Breaker and
so
5 for teleporter home. And there's only like 300 points in your army.
This can
300 points to get 9 points a turn is just incredible.
The caveat to this, there is a huge trap to repair teleport Homer, and that is deployment.
Yes.
If you are taking, if it's Dawn of War, and you can, and you know, it's and you've got a couple of units in your army that you're not even that bothered about, it's almost worth on the fly spending the CP to put them in reserve and just run them on turn 3 and score turn 3, turn 4, turn 5. You can pick it on the fly if you want, if you've not built into it. It's 5 points each time you complete it. It's huge. You need one unit to do it.
The reason I like it with that Terminator combo is because assault Terminators are just good anyway.
Yeah.
So whether you build them in for the repair teleporter line breaker big brain combo, or you're like, I've still got 5 or 6 Thunderhammer Termies rocking around, you're having a great time.
Well, that's
having a catch from the jump pack, you're having a great time.
It's all. I think it's you either build it really cheaply into your lit. You want a unit where it's either can repair teleport Homer or really good at something else, so you're not bothered if it's not repairing the teleport Homer. Or you have units that are in your list designed to take repair teleport Homer,
but can do other stuff as well.
But yeah, so it's like you either take a really cheap unit for it or a badass unit for it. But it's just good. It's flexible. You can take it on the fly. You can build for it. You know, it's 5 points each time you pull it off. It's one of those where you want to pick it a lot and use it a lot, so you can be familiar with it, so that when you see what army you're facing that day and you know your opponent is using X, Tau or whatever it may be, I'm going to take repair teleport. I mean, you need to. It's just one of those where you just take it and you score big.
Yeah.
But if you have the deployment zone,
table quarters,
you just don't want to touch it. Don't want to touch it at all. Now, raise the banners is an interesting one. The obvious, you take it away with the raise the banners because this is more your objective than mine.
So raise the banners is, I think it's a nice one for horde armies, simply because it requires an action. How it works is you move a infantry unit into contact with an objective. That unit then does the action of raising the banner, and for every turn after that you get a point for that objective. And at the end of the game, you get a point for each objective you have a flag on. So, for example, to max this out, you would move into contact with 3 objectives. Turn 1, raise the banner, begin the action, raise the banners, and then from that point on, command phase, turn 2, command phase, turn 3, 4, and 5. You get 3 points. You get to the end of the game, you get your final 3 points, 15 points. It is a good one for guard squads, because it is an infantry unit. It does not say excluding characters. So how you do it is you take an infantry squad who moves past the objective, you bring a character on who, let's say the Lord Commissar, who won't be doing orders, whose aura buff of leadership isn't affected because it's just an innate ability, and he raises the banner, and your opponent can't stop you from trying to achieve it because the character's screen and you get it in your next command phase.
Now, the next part of it you need to understand. Now, one of the things I wanted to say just then is, the fact that you understand and you mentioned that characters can do it, because the devil's in the detail with these secondaries. Know your secondaries, know what your options are and what units will be able to score stuff, such as engaging on fronts with the flyers, line breaker without, that kind of thing. It's just another example of the devil's in the detail. Now, raise the banners can be prevented. A unit cannot start this action while there are any enemy units in range of the same objective marker. So you can't, if I've got units there, you can't raise those banners. Now, but the thing is, you can grab them early when I can't, when I'm nowhere near.
It's a good way to go first.
Yeah. Now, if the action is complete at the end of your turn, if the action is successfully completed, that objective marker is said to have one of your army's banners raised on it. It's a cool modelling opportunity, just on a side note. Now, the banner is removed if your opponent controls the objective marker at the start of any phase. The second your opponent runs within 3 inches, apart from if it...
OBSEC is the only thing that can help you.
Yeah, well...
If you've got OBSEC and if you've got one guy
that's it,
and your opponent runs 30 Terminates onto it, it doesn't matter, you have OBSEC.
Now, raise the banners, you get 1 point every command phase. Now, the thing is, raise the banners is one of those annoying ones, because we've mentioned a couple of times about secondary objective and management. The spinning plates, managing yours, your opponent, all this, that and the other. Don't want to be pulled in different directions. Now, raise the banners is good because it pulls your opponent in different directions, quite literally, but also on a mental basis. If they want to score you, if they want to stop you scoring, they have to divert from their own secondaries to take control of these objectives just to stop you scoring 1 or 2 points. But it's not just 1 or 2 points, is it? Because those 2 objectives could add up to 10 points over the course of a game. So it's one of those where if you take it, your opponent has to invest a lot of time to stop you doing it, and in their head, it's not worth the investment to stop the points. But actually, in the meantime, you're going to be racking up loads and loads of points, and if they want, and you can quite easily stop them from blocking it. So it's the opposite. It's a secondary where it's really easy to stop it from being blocked.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And the great thing about Raise the Banners High...
Like, try as you might, you can try all game and not be able to take a banner down.
Once it's up, exactly. What I love about Raise the Banners is it's good whether it's a 4 objective or a 6 objective. A number of times throughout this video we've had a little debate over, oh, that would be a good in a 4 objective, bad in a 6 objective. The great thing about Raise the Banners is if you're in a 6 objective map, like I said previously, a lot of those times 3 of those objectives are nearer towards you. So you can get onto those turn 1, raise those banners and stay on them for... You're going to get max you raise the banners. You'll be on 3 objectives, so you'll probably get a lot of primary as well. You just camp on those 3 and you have a great time. Or if you're on a 4, then all you have to do is focus on 2 objectives, and you're still going to get 10 points for it. And I said at the beginning of the video, if you can get 10 points from a secondary, that is a good one to pick.
Yeah, if you just get raise the banners and 2 primary objectives, you will end the game
for 55 points.
With 55 points.
Because so if you 2 every turn, so that's 10 points a turn.
Plus 45
primary.
40. So it's 50 points.
No, it's 40 of 2 banners. If it's 2 banners, it's 50 points. And
so think about it. That's how strong Raise the Banners is for anybody. Just think about it. Whoever you are, Raise the Banners could be a really high scorer for you, because actually scoring 50 points is a solid score in 9th edition. It's not the best. You can get beaten, but remember, but you'll have 2 other objectives to pick up some scores on you. If you go Raise the Banners high, you're going for those primaries and you're guaranteeing you're going to score 2 objectives every turn, which is doable. You can then pick something like First Strike, 58 points all of a sudden.
You're having a great time.
You can literally just guarantee yourself a score of 58 with very little effort.
Potential big brain combo for like Marine players is you go, I'm going to go raise the banners, I'm going to raise it with like a captain. Again, my real warlord aura is still going to be activated. I'm going to raise the banners high on 2 banners.
I don't think you can use auras if you to do an action. I think it specifies that.
Well, let's say you can't, but you raise the banners. Any army, what you could do is you could pick raise the banners high.
Take some tactical raise.
Yeah, you could pick raise the banners high because it's scored at the end of your turn. So if your opponent kills you after that, the banner's still been raised in your turn, which I didn't realise until you read it out properly. I thought your opponent had a turn to try and stop you to do it.
No, you've raised it. it. You score the victory points in your command phase, but you raise it at the end of your turn.
So think about this for a big brain move. You're a Marine player. You raise the banners on 2 objectives. You just guarantee that you're going to raise those banners, and you're never going to lose objectives. You put your entire life effort into keeping those 2 objectives. You get 40 points for primary, 10 points to raise the banners. You then go and do the big brain combo, repair teleporter, line breaker with your captain and your super durable terminators. You get let's say you only manage to pull that. Let's say you only manage to pull that off. Just want to say how powerful it is. You only manage to pull it off for 2 turns. You get 10 points for teleport homer, 8 points for line breaker, 10 points for raise the banners, then 40 points for primaries. You are laughing.
I think you
haven't even had to pick anything that it doesn't matter what your opponent's army is.
I think more the point is what you can take, which absolutely can't be taken off you again. So, you know, things like, you know, imagine if you were facing knights and you just thought, right, I've got plenty of infantry, so I've got obsec.
Yeah.
I'm going to raise the banners. I'm going to pick first strike, and I know I can slay a knight. I know I can get a knight down, just one. And then I'm going to take Titan Slayers.
35 points though.
Now, you're going to... Yeah, but it doesn't matter because
because
that's what I'm saying. If you wanted to go ultra reliable against a really tough opponent, like knights, for example, you can sort of hold 2 objectives, pick 3 secondaries, and just guarantee yourself an automatic 55, 65 points.
Yeah.
Plus painting score, you're on 75.
Yeah.
And all you need is a well-rounded list that can, with enough infantry to just sit on 2 objectives, and the knights can't take them off you.
This is what I was saying. Like,
it's really strong if you're just going to gun line, or if you can just hold. If you can just hold that, just hold the banner. Now, it's also what I wanted to mention is I actually really like raise the banner in the context of the new assault intercessors. And you may think, well, why? Well, because if you're taking assault intercessors to sort of run forward, clear your lines, you've seen in a couple of battle reports, you know, that they can move forward and sort of be an anti-screen screen, if that makes sense. And, you know, they can achieve a lot just running around. They have obsec. They can take objectives. It's very easy to raise the banner if you've got sort of 2 rolling assault units, so to speak.
And don't forget your advances and movement.
Well, your advances and movements, that's the point I made earlier. So you move forward, you advance, you're on that objective, you just stick a banner on it, who gives a crap? You're losing 5 heavy bolt pistol shots or whatever. Now your blood angels, yeah? Now if you do that on 2 objectives, now if you're, for example, then assaulting with an assault heavy army, then we all know as assault players that, or if you're playing against, if you're someone who plays against assault a lot, that you are just trying to hold them off. You know, oh, there's some death company, shoot them down. Oh, there's some sand guards, shoot them down. You really don't have the time to go and take those banners down until maybe turn 5.
So if you can just 10, 15 points.
So you only need to raise 2 banners. You've got your backline intercessors in your backline objective in your deployment, and stick that up. And then you only have to. You can have a focused assault with just 1 lump of units running forward. In the first turn, you've raised 2 banners. Just hit them with the assault continuously throughout the entire game. They're just trying to manage things. By the time the dust settles, you've got those 10 points. It's just bloody good. And it looks like, why would I take raised banner? You know, on the first reading, if you're not that
that would have got you like 8 or 10 points on that last game.
If I'd done raise the banners, I would have scored 10 points. If I'd taken raise the banner instead of line breaker.
If you'd taken raise the banners and engaged on fronts, that could have been a very interesting.
I would have possibly won the game as I liked it.
There's about 15 points.
And that's what we say. You have to be. You know, go and watch our other battle report. You know, I think we may have spoiled the ending accidentally, but go and watch the other battle report.
They'll come in here after watching.
Yeah. And if you haven't, go and watch the battle report, because it's a really good example of sort of how, you know, if you've already watched the battle report and you've got the time, go back and rewatch it with this discussion in mind, thinking, where were my mistakes? I know I made many mistakes with secondaries. I do not know what I was thinking. I set myself up to fail with my secondaries. I could have easily... It's because I had this mentality that, he's AP -2 and he's got all the plasma in the world and I'm going to get shot at whatever, and I need to, like...
You just need to kill.
I just need to kill, and I need to pick off the targets and then stay alive. And that in itself was a good idea, but I should have picked secondaries that I could have racking up just for free.
You know. I really liked your tactic. We won't go into it now. I really liked it because what the secondaries that you picked allowed you to achieve excellent force concentration.
Well,
I think if the
that's
dice had gone a different way, and the wind had blown from east to west that day, things could have.
It could have been a total.
Could have been totally different. So I
That's
wouldn't
true.
give up on that tactic at all.
Yeah, well, no, I'm just saying, like, it's just raise the banners is one of those where, when we said it's about management, well, not only is it that if it works two ways, you can either manage the hell out of raise the banners, build towards it, guarantee the points and make it impossible to stop, or you can just leave it to rack up points for you if you have an army that's very in your opponent's face.
Yeah.
Because then it's just going to be doing the scoring, and then you're not like desperately trying to get into line break them and they're fucking with you, spreading out from their deployment zone, and when blah blah blah, you're just scoring. Now we're on to the final three, which is there is a trap to raise the banners. If you're a Drakari player and your opponent picks raise the banners, there's an argument. There's an argument to say, or a very fast moving player, there's an argument to say, it could be quite. Basically, if they're fast and you're fast, it can just be a cat and mouse game.
Yeah.
Where you're raising banners, they're taking them down. They're raising banners, you're taking them down. But that in itself makes for a very interesting, fun game if you're both fast-moving opponents. Yeah. But at that point, it becomes less reliable, as well. I wanted to say there are times when it's less reliable.
But it's one of those where it's like. It's one of those where it's very reliable unless you have a certain army build, and then you probably wouldn't be considering it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of those where it's just one of the best, but it seems
like an engagement on all the fronts.
It seems really difficult to manage, and like I can't be bothered with it. Like messy room syndrome. Like when you're a teenager, or maybe you are a teenager listening, and your room's got to the point of messiness where you don't even know where to start, so you don't start tidying because it's too much to think about.
Yeah.
Raise the banners is one of those where on the surface it's too much to think about, I can't be bothered with it, I'm going to pick something else. But actually played right, it's the easiest one to run in the game. You just leave it to your own devices.
Yeah.
Now,
however, just because you've raised the banner doesn't mean you still control that objective. So don't move your grenadier squad off and allow your opponent to get 10 additional victories.
Yeah, that's yeah. Don't make that mistake. Now, Warcraft, it's been a long video, so I think what we'll do is we'll do a separate Voxcast on the missions, and we'll talk about the secondaries in that. Because,
well, what we'll do is we've gone through secondaries, we'll go through each of the missions.
We'll go through each of the missions, that can be next week's Voxcast, because we want to let us know if this was a waste of our time and your time, guys, but if you enjoy it, let us know, because we're planning on doing a Voxcast a week for you guys. Now, Warcraft, I really like the top two. I think they're both really strong. So first one, mental interrogation. It's progressive objective. Score 3 victory points each time you successfully complete the following psychic action. Mental interrogation. It's a warp charge for psychic action. It's like casting a psychic power, effectively. And one psychic character from your army can attempt to perform it. This action in your psychic phase if it was in 18 inches of an enemy character model. So if they've got loads of characters, or their characters are going to be in their face, or your psyker is like Mephiston where he's going to be in their face, or something like that, it's
a really interesting one.
It's a really interesting one because it's easy to pick up here and there. Do you know what I mean? It's not all or nothing. A lot of them are kind of, you're either going to get 10...
It's an action though. Does that mean you can't go Super Saiyan with Mephiston, like he's got to interrogate that bozo?
Well, no, because it's in your psychic phase and it's completed in your psychic phase. So you essentially...
you successfully complete the following psychic action
in your psychic phase. So it's like casting a psychic power. So essentially what you do is it's essentially a psychic power that you can take without going into your psychic power allotment for your psyker. And it's really easy to cast, blast off a 4, and then they
let me tell you what I think it's a really funny one. That's right. I find it not funny as in bad. Well. Not funny as in bad, it's funny as in like humorous. Yeah. Which is, if you're facing someone who has a lot of psychers and you've got a lot of psychers, then neither one of you is probably going to take it because their psychers are just going to deny, get all your other powers off, I'm just going to deny you 3 victory points a turn. If you're facing someone who has no psychers, so who can't stop you, then you're like, yeah, great, I'll take this. But then they're probably just going to take Abhor the Witch and just kill all your witches, which we'll get to later.
If they can't.
Which is just funny.
From a Blood Angels perspective, and I know we said we're not doing army specific, but I just wanted to mention that Mephiston specifically can have a totally different role where he works beautifully as a midfielder. because he's so fast with his wings and so choppy that if you keep Mephiston alive and you keep him in the midfield and you control in the midfield, he can zip to any corner of the board to counteract. He can be a firefighter, essentially. He can run around putting out fires. He can take your opponent off objectives. He can kill units that your opponent's moved into table quarters. He can run around, he can chop up something and throw down a flag. He can do all kinds of stuff and not be so offensive, if that makes sense. And if you want to play him that way as a midfield supporter, then these two powers, mental interrogation, is great because he can cast a couple of powers, so he can wings and interrogate or something like that.
Because if it's a psychic action,
maybe.
See what I mean? Well,
let's put it this way: you could wings into the centre,
and then do it.
And then
you do psychic powers whatever order you want, can't you?
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Does it say? It just says complete it in the psychic phase. So yeah, it's just a psychic power.
Let me tell you why I don't like it as much. Now, bear in mind, I don't use a lot of psychers, so I'm coming from a blunt perspective, a psycher's perspective. I don't like it as much because it's one of those that falls into the category of my opponent can counter it.
It can be countered. It's one of those
if
where
you're facing, let's say you're facing one like Sisters of Battle, and you are guards. You're at a tournament. You've got guards. It's about not too uncommon factions to see on the tournament circuit, and your Astropath just there, like trying to interrogate the crap out of this Canoness, and she can't get to him because there's 2 layers of guards in between. Yeah. You could easily get 15 points from that.
Yeah, no, it's one of those where if you play it's an on the fly one. If you've got, obviously you have to build. Well, Warpcraft to a degree, they all fit into the build 2 category in some way because you essentially, or the first 2 do because you have to have a Psyker. But it's one of those where if you've got a Psyker, it can be it's just an on the fly. You pick it if your opponent's got enough characters that are going to be close. If they've just got some backline support characters or they've got barely any characters or something like that, obviously you're not going to take it. But in that case, it can be worth considering Psychic Ritual, and it really is. It's not only is it an either or because they're in the same category and you have to pick either or, but it really is a balance. Which one of these do you take? And again, Mephiston, as I mentioned for the Blood Angels players, you can really play a nice midfielder role because Psychic Ritual, I love the lore on this. I think if you're a Chaos player, you are almost compelled to take this because it's so cool. And as a Chaos Knight player, taking a dual thermal Tzeentchian Pyro Throne Psycho Knight, he can just sit in the middle. You don't really care. He's
not doing a lot of damage.
He's not doing. You don't care about your 1 smite a turn or whatever. So who gives a crap? But you've got your dual thermals. You hold in the centre of the board. You wrecking people. What it is score 15 victory points at the end of the battle if any unit from your army successfully completed the following psychic action 3 times during the battle. Psychic Ritual. So War Charge 3. So you're almost guaranteed to cast it, and if you're willing to command point it, you're going to get it.
There's a lot of people out there that have +1 to cast now.
Yeah, so it's guaranteed.
Fairly common.
1 psychic character unit from your army can attempt to perform this psychic action in your psychic phase if it is within 6 inches of the centre of the battlefield. Not wholly, just got to be your base within 6 inches, 1 part of your base.
So the reason I like this one is, unlike Investigate Sites, if your opponent is also within 6 inches, you don't care.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I also like, and let me double check before I sound stupid, it says, from your army, successfully complete the following action 3 times during the battle. Not 3 times concurrently, just 3 times. So you can do it 1 turn, and then be like, oh, next turn I actually could really do with getting a smite off or doing a warp time. And then you're like, okay, turn 3 I'll go back to it. Turn 4
exactly.
I'll go back to it. Or you pick it up the last 1 turn.
Now, it's any unit. It is not a ritual. And I think
a character has to do it though.
Yeah, 1 psychic character from your army can attempt to perform the psychic. So it says, if any unit from your army successfully complete the following action 3 times.
3 separate characters could do it once each over the course of the game.
No, they can't.
So it has to be the same character.
It has to be the same character.
Okay.
Which does make it a little bit of a trap potentially, because you can have your Psyker cast this twice, and I can be my Blood Angels thinking, yeah, castaway, whatever, castaway rat, and I know in my head that I'm just going to jump Lamarty's over there after he's got his, he's going to support the Death Company to run in, and then Lamarty's going to run over, bop your Psyker on the head, and you've lost the secondary, as in 0 points, nil point, you're getting none. If you're a guard player and you've got 3 Psykers, you could take 3 Astropaths, have them in the centre, protected by plenty of infantry or whatever you want, your support characters, and have all 3 cast this.
No,
on the no, yeah.
It's like power, isn't it?
But what I mean is, so you've got, well, you do it with 2. So you maybe do 1 the first turn and 1 the second turn, and then I'm just spitballing here because I'm not a guard player.
If one dies, you still got
the other to carry on
2
with.
out of 3 more turns.
So you spend your first turn, and it says, because it's not a psychic power, it's just we'd need to look it up in more detail, but
I feel like a psychic action is like.
But it is an action.
It's got a warp charge, so I feel like only one.
Yeah, 1 psychic character from your army can attempt to perform this psychic action in your psychic phase.
So it has to be like turn 1 this guy, turn 2 this guy,
and then hopefully, and then you just focus in on the other guy. But if he's dead by turn 4,
you still got a
chance.
It's a tricky
dead
one.
By turn 3, you want to. Yeah, it's a tricky one. Basically, what you want to take away from this is it can be a nil point. Like, it can be a 15 points.
It's not like, oh, you did it twice, get 10 points.
Yeah,
I did it 3, or you didn't do it.
And that's why when we first started talking about this, we said, you know, it really is a balancing act. Because mental interrogation, you get 3 points each time you get it off. So you can get that off 3 times and get 9 points. Or you can get it off twice and get 6 points, and your psychic gets killed. Psychic Ritual, you get it off twice, your psychic gets killed, you get nothing.
You pick
0.
You pick Psychic Ritual when you have a couple of Psykers who, like Guard Psykers, they're support units, you know. If they get Night Shroud off, whatever, you know, it's alright. And you're facing an army like Sisters who aren't going to be able to deny it very often unless they want to spend a CP to try and
or just anyone, like Drakari can't deny unless they've got the...
Or Drakari, and you just take a unit of, like, max unit of Bulgrins, and you just bubble wrap this Astropath, and you just put him in the middle, and he just sits there. And all he has to do is for 3 turns.
As a Chaos
Knight,
all
he has to do.
It is essentially an auto include for Chaos Knights, and I'll tell you why. I've played 2 games with my Chaos Knights, and scored max both games with this, because what you do is you put it on your worst knight.
Yeah.
You make your worst knight a Psyker, because let's face it, your opponent is thinking, I've got to kill 2 of these knights. And they're going to kill your Castellan, or they're going to kill your Rapid Fire Battle / Gatling Cannon one. Do you know what I mean? You put it on the knight, which isn't really... It's the cheap knight, so to speak, or the least damage output knight. Or you sort of back... If you've got quite an assaulty, you know, you've got 3 gallant equivalents running forward to spoilers or whatever, you just have... Essentially, I've made the point, you know, you have your knight that's going to be lowest on the priority list, and you just have him cast this 3 times, because... It really does put your opponent in a really shit position because they can focus in, as I said, the dual thermal. They're great, but they're also cheap and they're low shots, so they're a low target priority. You cast that off 3 times, you know, it's really hard to get your opponent. Once you've got it off twice, it's very hard for your opponent.
It's a tricky one.
Your opponent can't just snap their fingers and go, right, I'm going to kill that knight and stop it at the last minute. Like, your opponent could snap the fingers, decide to kill you off at the last minute, do 22 wounds to your knight, not quite get it off, and then you cast it 3rd turn, bam,
It's definitely one of those ones that is very army, who you're facing is very
it's
dependent.
super...
If you are facing a Blood Angel army, do not take that in your Chaos Knight, because he is going to take his Smash Captain,
and
he's going to fly it into a Knight, and he won't even need to use Honour the Chapter, he's just going to smash the crap out of that Knight. And he can do that turn 3. You can be like, yes, turn 1 and 2 I've done it. And turn 3, this Smash Captain's going to come out of nowhere, and he's going to
Smash Captains are
it's a great one if you know that your opponent is going to struggle to stop that Psyker 3 times.
Yeah.
You either build around it or you've got an army.
I would say it's 0 points is a no-go. You really can't get no points. So if you are thinking... If you've got a gut feeling they might be able to stop you, just don't take it. Like if you've got even a sense,
if it's at 1%,
if you've got any that, if you've got a tingling in your nether regions and you're thinking, oh, I might have to roll an anal circumference check at some point in this game when it comes to the third psychic. You know, they might be able to stop me. Just don't take it because they're gonna stop you and they're gonna block an entire secondary. It's like, oh god, I've just. Do you know what I mean?
The C3PO tells you the odds, and he says, "So we've got a 99% chance of getting a psychic ritual off. Don't do a Han Solo and say, I like those odds. Go, no, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, just pick something else. Just pick something else. Go mental interrogation.
Yeah.
That's it. If you're either or, psychic ritual you take if it's a bloody guarantee because then it's 15 points.
Man.
Otherwise, mental interrogation, don't risk getting 0.
Yeah.
Right, Abhor the Witch. Final one. End game objective. You cannot select the secondary objective if your army includes any psychic units. So it's again,
like most of my
they're all a build for. Yeah, you build for all of these. You either can or you can't. Score 5 victory points at the end of the battle for each enemy psychic character unit that is destroyed, and 3 victory points for every other enemy psychic unit that is destroyed. Now, for me, this goes in there with the Titan Slayers or the thin their ranks heavy vehicles.
Are you
worth
facing
a point
Grey
each.
Knights? Are you facing Thousand Suns? Auto pick. If you're not facing those,
just it's not
don't
worth
bother.
your time. Like
yeah,
like do you know what I mean? Because Psychers, as a general rule, Psychers, like even Spaceman Librarians, they're not that great, are they? Do you know what I mean? Even a Primaris Librarian's like 4 attacks or something crap.
Eldar Farseers are quite common.
Yeah.
And you only have to kill 3 Farseers or Spirit Seers.
Yeah.
So you could take this. A good
it's
one
a great
for this
one you need to be familiar with it for tournaments.
Yeah.
You're facing out because you can get any opponent.
Are you a Sisters player? Sisters, again, they're a pretty competitive army. They've got a couple of good builds. Valor's Heart, Bloody Rose. Do you come across an Elder player who's got a couple of Farseers, maybe a Spirit Seer? If you do, you take Abhor the Witch, you take Assassinate. They're in 2 different categories. You're going to want to kill those characters anyway, because they're buffing characters, so they're on your list to die anyway. And for each one that you kill, you get 8 points.
Now,
that's not a bad way.
Yeah, that is, and absolutely bang on. Now, one thing to be aware of with Abhor the Witch. Now, you reveal secondary, so you won't know what they've taken. But if you've got some familiarity with your opponent, or from looking at their list, you think there's a good chance they're going to take mental interrogation or psychic ritual. But they only have maybe 2 characters. This can still be 2 psychic characters. This can still be a very solid one. Because you could essentially kill only one of the psychics, only score 5 points for yourself. But you've stopped them completing the ritual, so flattened 15 points, and it's a 20-point swing. So I'm just saying, be aware, it's one of those where you can easily have a straightforward approach to your game. I mean, it's like an easy to manage one.
If you're in your example of the Chaos Knights, if your opponent, if you think the opponent's going to do the, I'm going to sit in the middle and use my knight to just
whilst my other knights do all
to get 15 points.
Draw
you can be like, right, well, I will take. If I think that's going to happen, I'll take Titan Slayer Abhor the Witch.
Yeah. Because
that is pretty. You have to like read your opponent.
But if your opponent it's very common to take a Psychic Knight. Zeecham Pyro Throne is really popular as a relic just because it's cool and badass. And to have a Zeecham Pyro Throne, like one of my favourite knights across both my knight armies in terms of headcanon and lore is my Chaos Knight with dual thermal and the Zeecham Pyro Throne, because I just have this I just have this image of this guy who's like, because my guys, they're not really aware that they've fallen to chaos. They're just like, I won't go into it now. But this guy, is the fuel tanks and the thermal
where this tentacle came from.
Yeah, the fuel tanks and the thermal cannons, ran out a couple of centuries ago. But he's just, you can still keep burning away. You've got your dual thermal. He's also a psycho. It works for me in my brain. I love that. But yeah, I
think it's an obvious one for the Witch, isn't it?
It's one of those. It's one of those. It's just you're gonna know when to take it.
It's either exactly.
But it can be a massive trap.
It can be
a massive trap because psychers, unless they're Grey Knights essentially. Psychers are
characters they could sit, but
if
that Elder player sees you've taken up all the witches, you'll be like, well, all my psychic powers have got an 18 or 24 inch range, so I guess I'm just staying 18 or 24 inches away from
exactly.
as long as possible.
It's almost like if you're taking Abhor the Witch, then you should be taking Assassinate. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Unless it's Grey Knights. If you look at the armies and you see Abhor and you're in the situation, you go, right, Abhor the Witch is an auto-include hit, it's just obvious. Look, but you already got a couple in your head of other secondaries that you want. Just be flexible. As you said, the first bit of advice.
Yeah.
Don't just auto pick the other ones you're familiar with, because if you've gone for Abhor the Witch, assassinate, you're all pulling in the same direction. Every psychic character you kill is getting you 8 points.
Do you come across a guard player? Is you do what a lot of guard players do? Triple Astropath, no brainer. You look at that, you go, right, there's Astropaths, they've got 3 mirrors each, they've got a 6 of armor save, no invulnerable. You look at that and you go, each one of the Astropaths that I kill is 8 points.
It's mad. To kill a 25-point model?
25-point model.
You can swat them aside.
Yeah.
So
they're probably going to kill themselves. If they perils, they've got a 33% chance of just killing themselves.
Yeah, because it's destroyed.
Yeah.
So if they've got mass psychers and you reckon they're going to, I mean, what could be better than if they perils, kill themselves, and give you 8 points? Because it literally says that is destroyed for both Assassinate and Abhor the Witch.
Yeah.
That is such a hilarious combo. I can't believe we stumbled across that.
The opponent just gives you the game.
The opponent just gives you the game because every time. I mean, if you're facing a psychic character heavy army, pick those 2 just because they're going to shit themselves. Every psychic power that they cast is going to be a moment of voodoo.
Yeah.
They're going to be, and if one dies, literally one dies and gives you 8 points, they're going to be like, crap! I can't.
You know what's crazy? Everyone says Jesus Lacour are in the toilet, and they are, but there's one matchup where if a Jesus Lacour player turns up with 3 of the anti-psyker sniper rifles and just makes the psychers keep perilsing themselves to death. You feel like, I will Abhor the Witch and I will assassinate. Yeah, you're not taking a Patriarch and you're not taking a Mega, so you're probably already running an extremely specialist build. But if you do that, you can just make them kill themselves.
If you're facing an Elder Psyker list, just take Abhor the Witch and Assassinate and just divert all of your resources into killing 3 Psykers, 4 Psykers, 5 Psykers.
Yeah. All you need to do is kill 3 Psykers and you get 24 points.
Yeah.
That's like half of what most people get.
Yeah.
If you get 3 more.
And then if you've got your primaries, and then if you forget everything else and just sit on 2 primaries,
you've got 40 points plus your 24. You're on 64 points. That's
a solid.
You haven't even taken into account your 3rd secondary yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Take your raise.
So it's just a beautiful.
You're looking at 74.
So it's just a beautiful combo. Yeah, it's a massive. So we've got a couple of as we've gone through it, we've got a couple of really beautiful combos there for raise the banners and domination, Abhor the Witch and assassinate. They may be situational,
teleport home and line breaker.
Teleport home and line breaker. So there's some combos there. We've discussed the traps. We've given you to have those sort of mindset of should I be taking this because I've built for it? Should I avoid this now because even though I've built for it, I'm going to have to pick something else because of objectives or deployment? I think we've covered it all. So you guys tell us what you think now.
I think what we've done is we've hopefully demonstrated exactly what we were talking about at the beginning, which is you're going to if you can build your army where you definitely want to take 1 or 2 objectives every game. I know that I've built my army that way. We've also demonstrated that you're going to want to be able to have at least 1 that you can pick on the fly. Is
it Sun Tzu said no plan survives the first contact of battle or something like that? I'm paraphrasing here, but it really is the case. Yeah. Have your plan, know what's familiar to you, and know what you can do comfortably, but also know what to do when the shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
Because actually, there can be some matchups in 8th edition which traditionally you were utterly screwed in, where with the right selection of secondaries you can just dominate an opponent and just score, run rings around them. It truly is good play and a good selection of secondaries. You can run rings around an opponent that would otherwise, in terms of damage output, if they bring you to a hair's breadth from tabling but you score 20 more points, you won the game. It doesn't matter how deadly or scary or dangerous their army is. It's the great level of the cheesy armies.
Yeah.
You just gotta really know your secondaries. It's. I know that seems obvious, but don't just pick the same 3 every time.
No.
And sort of hope to score 2 of them.
No. I think you can definitely build. I think you can definitely build to be comfortable with 2. So
you should be
based on your list, and then that 3rd one is from a guard perspective, and from an elite perspective. I think what you're saying is build to have 1 and have 2 on the fly.
Yeah.
If you're an aggressive assault army, build to have 1, 2 on the fly. If you're a guard army which is more defensive, build to have 2 and have 1 on the fly. Other way around.
I mean, what I think the rule to take away is you can't build to have 3. You're lucky to build. You should build to have 1, whoever you are, and then have a couple that you'd ideally have. It's like built. You've got one that you're definitely going to take 99% of the time. You've got a couple to pick from that you like in certain circumstances, maybe even combos.
Yeah.
That you use one of those two 90% of games.
Yeah. And even when we're talking about like the Plague Marine player who Plague Marine armies which have started podiuming, they're going in there with raised banners on the mines, domination on the mines, things like that. Those two are ones which they know they're going to get, but after that they're like, okay, I'm going to keep that one on the fly.
Yeah.
If I'm facing knights, I'll take that.
Because remember, you might build your army. You may build your army about one of these, but it fits into the deployment zone category. I think about it, you can't have 1 in 5 games or 2 in 6 games being, you're fucked from the beginning because.
What I would say is, what I feel like is the strongest combination, the strongest lists out there will build so they can, before the game even starts, they'll be trying to guarantee as many secondaries as they can, and will be trying to give up the least amount of secondaries to the opponent. So what will happen is, even if they just draw on primary with their opponent, they'll then win on secondary, or they'll dominate on primary and dominate secondary and then not give up any.
So what you're saying is, to win, you need to score points more than your opponent.
That is, I think, exactly what Sun Tzu said as well.
Revolutionary tactics, right here.
Yeah.
I think, we'll call it a night there because we're probably at risk of getting onto the rambling stage now.
Yeah.
So, you guys at home, as always, we really value the community that's built up around these two channels, and we know a lot of you, probably more Blood Angel, more Doom Club, but we know a lot of you comment on both. We love the involvement. We've said it 1,000 times before, but we absolutely value your input hugely. So please do get in touch. Please do get involved. Join the community. Let us know what you think about this. Do you want more Voxcasts? Blah, blah, blah.
Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah, I hope you found it interesting and entertaining.
See you guys next time.
Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.